There is a moment in Venezuela's recent history when the noise simply stopped. The oil pumps slowed, the lights flickered, grocery shelves thinned, and for millions of people, the future went from uncertain to unimaginable almost overnight. To understand how that happened, you have to step back, past headlines, past slogans, past the familiar talking points, and look at the quiet machinery of power that was set in motion years earlier. Venezuela once sat on the world's largest proven oil reserves. For decades, that oil paid for schools, hospitals, subsidies, an entire social contract built on a single promise. As long as oil flowed, life would move forward. But by the mid-2000s, the system was already fragile. Years of mismanagement, corruption, and political polarization had hollowed out institutions. When global oil prices fell, the country staggered. And then, in 2017, the pressure changed direction.
Welcome to Obrix, where the untold becomes unforgettable. Don't just watch the world, uncover it. Subscribe now.
The United States, under Donald Trump, shifted from targeted sanctions to something far more expansive. What began as restrictions aimed at individuals close to the Venezuelan government soon widened to the nation's economic bloodstream. In August 2017, financial sanctions cut Venezuela off from U.S. capital markets. New debt became impossible. Refinancing vanished. The oxygen thinned. In January 2019, the strategy escalated. U.S. sanctions targeted PDVSA, Venezuela's state-owned oil company, the engine that powered nearly everything. Revenues from oil sales were frozen, accounts were blocked, buyers hesitated, ships rerouted. Oil that once paid for food and medicine now sat unsold. The official explanation was straightforward. Pressure would force political change. The goal was to isolate the government of Nicolas Maduro, to weaken his grip, to accelerate a transition. The rhetoric was moral, urgent, confident, but sanctions do not fall evenly. Quick break. Stories like this can be intense, and a lot of people end up doom scrolling for hours. That overload feeling is real, and it's hard to snap out of it. That's why I've been using the Brain Song, a 12-minute audio session designed as a quick reset when your mind feels full. Put on headphones, press play, and take a short break to come back feeling calmer and more focused. If you want to try it and support this video, click the first link in the description. Disclosure, it's an affiliate link, so I may earn a commission at no extra cost to you. Alright, now let's get back to the story. Inside Venezuela, the consequences rippled outward, first through institutions, then through households. Inflation, already high, spiraled. Imports collapsed. Hospitals rationed supplies. Families improvised meals from whatever they could find. The currency lost meaning. Time became the real unit of cost. Economists who studied the period noticed a pattern common to comprehensive sanctions. When a country is cut off from financing and export revenue simultaneously, the shock compounds. The state loses capacity at the same moment citizens need it most. Markets don't adjust, they seize. For many Venezuelans, this wasn't geopolitics. It was waiting in line for bread. It was choosing which prescription to skip. It was watching a country with oil beneath its feet run out of fuel above ground. From Washington, the policy looked like leverage. From Caracas, it felt like gravity. And gravity doesn't argue, it just pulls. In the language of power, sanctions are described as a non-military option, a way to apply force without firing a shot. But anyone who has lived under them knows they are not bloodless. They are structural, slow, relentless. After the oil sanctions, Venezuela's economy contracted sharply. Independent estimates varied, but the direction was clear. Oil production plunged, state revenue collapsed, and with imports constrained, scarcity became normal. U.S. officials insisted humanitarian goods were exempt. On paper, they were. In practice, banks avoided transactions that even touched Venezuela, fearing penalties. Shipping companies raised rates or withdrew. Insurance vanished. The exemptions existed, but the pathways to use them did not. This phenomenon has a name among analysts: overcompliance. When the risk of punishment is high, private actors choose safety over nuance. The result is a chilling effect that spreads far beyond the letter of the law. At the same time, Washington recognized an alternative authority. In early 2019, the US-backed opposition leader Juan Guaidó as interim president, transferring control of certain Venezuelan assets abroad. The message was unmistakable. Legitimacy would be decided externally. Supporters argued the move was necessary to break a stalemate. Critics warned it would deepen fragmentation. Inside Venezuela, the political deadlock hardened. Each side waited for the other to collapse. Neither did. Meanwhile, the social fabric frayed. Doctors immigrated, engineers left, teachers departed. By the early 2020s, millions had fled, one of the largest migrations in modern Latin American history. Entire neighborhoods hollowed out. Families split across borders, connected by patchy calls and remittances that arrived late, if at all. Here's the twist that rarely makes the headlines. Sanctions did not topple the government. They changed its behavior. Cut off from traditional markets, Venezuela turned to informal networks. Oil moved through intermediaries, discounts deepened, transparency vanished. The economy didn't disappear, it went underground. And underground economies reward the very actors sanctions are meant to weaken. Several policy experts began to say quietly what was once unthinkable out loud. Maximum pressure had reached diminishing returns. It had inflicted undeniable pain, but not decisive change. Instead, it had entrenched positions and narrowed options. Inside the US government, debates surfaced. Some officials pushed for flexibility, others doubled down. The strategy had momentum, and momentum is difficult to reverse. By the time the pandemic arrived, Venezuela faced a perfect storm. Sanctions, collapse, and a global health crisis. The margins for survival shrank again. In Washington, the policy was defended as principled. In Venezuela, it was experienced as cumulative. Layer upon layer, decision after decision. Each one distant, each one consequential. In that distance, the space between intention and impact is where the story becomes uncomfortable. So what did Trump really do to Venezuela? He did not create its crisis. That story began earlier, with structural dependence on oil and years of political failure. But his administration transformed the scale and speed of the collapse by targeting the country's economic core and its access to the global system. Supporters will say the aim was freedom. Critics will say the cost was borne by civilians. Both statements can be true. In the years since, even some of the policy's architects have acknowledged limits. Sanctions were loosened, then tightened, then recalibrated. Licenses were granted. Talks resumed. Oil trickled back to market under conditions that would have seemed impossible at the height of pressure. But history does not rewind cleanly. A generation grew up amid shortages. A diaspora reshaped the region. Trust in institutions, already thin, wore thinner still. And the lesson many Venezuelans took was not about ideology, but about vulnerability. How quickly life can be reshaped by decisions made far away. There is a broader implication here, one that extends beyond Venezuela. Sanctions have become a preferred tool of modern power. They promise control without war, morality without mess. But Venezuela shows what happens when pressure outpaces pathways, when leverage is applied without an exit. The story isn't just about Trump. It's about a system that treats economies like switches and societies like side effects. When policies succeed, credit is claimed. When they fail, complexity is blamed. But for the people who live through them, there is no abstraction, only memory. Years later, some Venezuelans speak of those months as a blur of lines and waiting. Others remember the silence, factories quiet, streets dim, futures postponed. And many carry a quiet anger, not aimed at a single leader, but at a world that measured outcomes in statements rather than lives. Power, after all, is not just the ability to act, it is the responsibility for what follows. And Venezuela stands as a reminder that when pressure is applied to a fragile place, the shock does not stop at the target. It travels through households, through generations, through time. That is the part of the story that doesn't fit neatly into speeches, the part that lingers, the part that keeps people awake at night.